Hello and welcome to the City of Cedar Falls Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Wednesday, September 25th, or 25, 2024. I call this meeting to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Alberhusky.
Here.
Gribovich.
Here.
Hartley.
Here.
Henderson.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Watkins.
Here.
We have a new commissioner tonight, so.
All right.
Mosier.
Here.
Sorensen.
Here.
Stallnaker.
Here.
Okay. Maybe Maggie wants to introduce herself tonight.
We have a new commissioner tonight. Maggie, I didn't catch your last name again.
Watkins.
Watkins, okay.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the commission. It's a lot of fun.
I'm here for the fun.
All right.
My name is Maggie Watkins. I've lived in the area for 11 years now. I moved to Cedar Falls from Waterloo 2 years ago. Bought a house in Grandview Court with my husband. And I'm an architect at Envision Architecture in downtown Waterloo. And just happy to be a part of this and excited to get to know you all a little bit more and to contribute. So thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
All right. Our first agenda item is approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries. All right, this is portion of the meeting for any public comment for anything that is not on the agenda tonight. All right, I will bring it back to commission. All right, our first order of business, old business tonight, is zoning code text amendment, accessory dwelling units.
I got that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. A lot of this is going to be a recap of what we discussed on August 28th. In a committee of the whole meeting on March 18th, 2024, City Council made a referral directing staff to prepare an ordinance to allow accessory dwelling units, commonly referred to as ADUs, in all residential zones. Currently, they are only allowed downtown. So, what is an ADU? An ADU is a smaller secondary unit that is accessory to a principal dwelling unit. They are commonly created within the principal dwelling unit. For example, in a daylight basement or within a detached accessory structure such as above a garage. In cities that allow them, properties with an ADU are differentiated from duplexes primarily through limitations and restrictions that ensure the ADU is subordinate to a principal dwelling. Last time I presented, I outlined the advantages of an ADU policy for homeowners and for the city. These are also in the staff report. I don't intend to cover them again here, but if there are further questions or discussion points, we can go over those. As discussed in our previous meeting, staff is proposing a policy that is not far from what is allowed downtown. These are just a few of the standards up on the screen that are defined in the proposed policy. It is proposed to only allow them on owner-occupied properties, have no more than one ADU per lot, limit them to one bedroom, limit the size to 50% of the principal dwelling, or 800 square feet, whichever is less. To minimize the complication of design standards, staff proposes to only allow them in a detached structure or in the rear yard, detached structure in the rear yard or within the existing envelope of the principal structure. In other words, only minor additions to accommodate an entrance to the ADU will be allowed on the principal structure. Also, a 5-foot setback is proposed on the side and rear lot lines. There was some concern or commentary last time about the owner-occupied requirement. Just to explain from the staff perspective, the city currently has programs and policies that encourage home ownership. One being the rental-to-owner conversion program, where the city provides a forgivable loan or a grant to help improve what was previously a rental property. This grant essentially requires the owner to be in the home for at least 5 years after those improvements are made. Kind of translating this to ADUs, not having the owner-occupied requirement for ADUs is somewhat antithetical to the goals of that program specifically. Design standards were also important to define. Staff proposes that ADUs only be allowed in a permanent structure, so no tiny house on wheels. The materials and windows should match the principal structure. A separate secure entrance to the unit is required, either from the exterior or from a shared foyer. A paved path to the entrance. 2 egress windows in the basement units for safety and ventilation purposes. No exterior stairs leading to an upper story would be allowed for access to an ADU located within the principal residence. However, exterior stairs would be allowed to access a unit above a detached garage, which would be in the rear yard, so not typically viewable from the street. I did want to provide a quick explanation for how this provision is being placed in the code. As shown in the proposed code language in the packet, in ordinance form, staff proposes to have an accessory uses section under which ADUs can be enumerated and standards can be defined. The accessory use code section serves several purposes. First, it defines accessory uses, then it outlines general standards applicable to all accessory uses. For a quick overview on that, these standards essentially define the accessory uses relationship to principal uses. So they are subordinate to, have the same ownership as, are consistent with, and are co-located with principal uses, typically. Lastly, this section provides a place to enumerate the accessory uses. For now, it will just have ADUs, but as we have other uses necessary to define, or as we undertake to better organize the code, this will be an appropriate place for several other items already in our code, such as detached accessory structures or swimming pools. Just for clarity, the accessory uses section does not substantively change any policies related to accessory uses. We just didn't have a well-defined place for them in the code, nor a method to organize them. With that, staff recommends approval of these proposed amendments to Chapter 26 zoning, which amendments outline the standards by which accessory dwelling units may be allowed citywide. And with that, I turn the time back over.
Thank you, Chris. Any commissioners have any questions for staff?
Yeah. So is this also, how does this pertain to new construction? Is new construction permissible as well?
Define that a little bit more. You mean
If
if
I was
someone's
building a
building
brand new house, could I have it laid out to have this second dwelling attached right from the very beginning?
Yes.
Okay. And does this supersede like neighborhood covenants or how do we get into that area?
No, not necessarily. While the city might be able to issue a permit for something, they still need to deal with their local covenants, whatever is applicable there. We don't typically get in between homeowners and their owner associations.
Those covenants are not really recorded or enforced by the city.
No, they're not. The private covenants have to be enforced by, so we would not be looking at the private covenants. If somebody came to the city and requested an ADU, or a permit for an ADU, we'd be just looking at the city code requirements. And we'd be issuing, if it's allowed and they've met all the requirements, we'd be issuing that permit.
I mean, somebody
Now, that
could.
landowner would need, the property owner would need to know, because their neighbors could then sue them if it was counter
I was
to
going to
their
say, somebody could
private
start
covenants.
building something on their property and after completion, theoretically, figure out that the neighbors figure out what they're doing and say.
Yeah, so they should be aware of what their private covenants are and make sure that they're, following their private covenants, and that's a private
It
matter.
might be something that before we issue a permit, from the city standpoint, we might want to say, hey, make sure you check your covenants. They're not enforced by us, but
We often do.
I would suggest you
let
do your
people
due
know that.
diligence here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
One of the things that we were thinking about doing, if, this all gets passed, is preparing a brochure so that, because this is something new, that would outline a lot of these requirements, and then also say, remember that you're going to have to meet the building code requirements, and maybe this is something also a reminder, make sure that you're meeting all your private covenants, or checking with your homeowners association. So those are the kinds of things we wouldn't put in the code, but we can put it as a reminder in like a brochure that would give information about it.
Right.
And typically, if they're with an association, they actually record those covenants, at least my experiences with the actual original granting of the association. I haven't practiced real estate law in Iowa, but that's what I was used to pre-coming here. So I agree, the city doesn't have to go and look for them, but they're publicly recorded typically, if it's a part of a homeowners association.
Any more questions for staff?
I just had one. Will the units be able to be used as like a VRBO as well as a rental?
Yeah.
Just however they
Yes.
want to use it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to this item? Name and address, please.
Craig Fairbanks, 405 Spruce Hills Drive. I'm here to speak in favor of the ADU units. I'm excited to see a different type of home ownership that may solve some affordability problems. But I do have some questions, and Courtney took about most of them, but anyway. You were addressing the part about covenants in a neighborhood and whether or not that involves a classification, but if a covenant restricted duplexes, according to what you have here in an edit definition, it says these are not duplexes. So if you did a structure and you provided an ADU in a new construction, so this would not be classified as a duplex. Is that my understanding?
That is
Yes.
correct.
Why is the structure limited to one bedroom? Is there a reason for that?
At least currently, we are reflecting what council has approved in the downtown code. And so we're following that more strictly at the moment.
You know, there's some scenarios that I can think of that if you had a single person who has a child, why would you not allow an extra bedroom? That's just a question.
So I think the idea is to try to keep these to the idea that they're accessory uses. So one way you can do that is to make sure that they're small units, and one of the ways is to limit the number of bedrooms.
So is it basically restricted to one person,
They would be restricted to 2 adults,
two adults?
and so there's no restriction on children, but,
Yeah.
you know, practically speaking, somebody would live in it and want to just have 1 bedroom, so it would naturally limit the occupancy accordingly.
Okay. Answered that one. And then you listed in the agreements that the permanent structure is required, no wheeled or portable structure. I guess I'm asking about foundations. Would a frost-protected footing be allowed in this use?
Be allowed or required?
Be allowed.
It'd be required.
Required.
The building code would require that,
Require a full foundation?
yes.
Yes.
Well, I would make one statement that in the era that we live in of affordability, this is a huge gain for young people who probably can't reach into a new single-family home, and this providing them income would be a huge leap forward, at least having them get into home ownership and the opportunity to build wealth. I think that's, if you get into a home in a single family, you're bound to the community. You have a vested interest in taking care of the property. So I agree that it should be homeowner occupied uses only. I'm sure that rentals would be an option for many people, but I think it makes it hard for neighbors and everybody else if you can't be there and control what goes on. Thank you much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public like to speak? Name and address, please.
Gabe Grodehouse, 3215 Homeway. Live here in town with my wife. I work at a small financial practice. I just have one rental here, so not a big-time developer. Just want to share my experience. Yeah, thank you all for your service, and thank you for bringing this up. I spoke last time about being in favor of the ADUs, and I guess the question I would ask is, why are we doing ADUs? And the answer I think I've heard from the Housing Needs Assessment, from this body, from City Council, from other city staff, folks in the area, is that the goal is affordable housing. And if we want affordable housing, I think we need to have the code written in a way that promotes and allows this housing to be built. Staff mentioned they had looked at other cities and ordinances, as I think they Ames, Des Moines, Cedar Rapids. I reached out to some of those cities. Cedar Rapids specifically, which has 4 colleges, does allow ADUs in both owner-occupied and non-owner-occupied. And they've mentioned this as a success. I talked to folks in their engineering and planning, that this allows folks to have the ability to build and run these ADUs. In Iowa City right now, they're actually trying to peel back some restrictions. When they brought the ADUs up, it was very restrictive, kind of how it's proposed now, and they've actually been working to peel some of those back to make it more houses available. If you think about the pool of houses that would be available for something like this, the more restrictions you put on, the less are available there. What's proposed right now is essentially no more than 1 ADU per lot. Totally understand that. The 1 bedroom feels pretty subjective. I would say that would also be very limiting. And then the size restriction as well. It says 50% of the area or 800 square feet, whichever is less. I printed off what I have for my unit here in town, and I can leave this with folks to see. It's a 618 square foot unit, 2 bedroom, 1 bath. It's I think a cute little house. We've put time, effort, money into it. It's a short-term rental right now, VRBO, Airbnb. We have a rental permit, and there's a garage on that property that's 480 square feet. So under the current proposed, you wouldn't be able to do anything with that. So I think one amendment would need to be, you could say 800 square feet, 1,000 square feet, or half the primary dwelling unit. But having whichever is less means there'd be the inability to do anything with that property there. It's a large lot. It's a 54 by 200. It's over 10,000 square feet. I'd be unable to use any of that or do anything with that because I don't live there myself. And the question arises, if I do it at my current home, I have an ADU there. I'm assuming when I go to pull permits from the city, letter gets sent to the county, and they'll say, okay, there's an ADU there. Your taxes will go up because you've improved the value. And I think that's a great thing. It's good for the city. It's good for the person living there. It'd be good for the investor. The problem is if I move away and I want to keep that on my rental portfolio, that's not going to be an option. I don't think I'm going to get a tax abatement. I don't think they give a credit back to that. So those are some of the issues I see. I guess the second question I had is, who is actually going to be taking the risk to do this? Just going to be money out of your pocket? It's going to be trying something new? I don't think it's going to be large developers. I'm not a large developer. I can't scale this across everything. I think it's everyday people, some of them with their owner-occupied, some of them with 1 or 2 rental units, trying to make something nice, either an Airbnb or VRBO that has 2 properties, an ADU in the primary one, or maybe one's a long-term tenant and one's an ADU. I don't think it's going to be intrusive to the neighborhoods. I think it actually accomplishes the goal. I guess I would disagree that it goes against what the city is doing. I think the goal of the credit you're giving for those folks is turning things that are already rentals into a new house. I don't think that is contrary to letting a non-owner occupied house have an ADU. Just in closing, my dad always told me when I ask for something, say what I'm asking for. So here's what I'm asking for, and you all have the power to do this. You can amend this however you'd like before you send it to council, and that would make it a lot cleaner versus back and forth. And we can see Iowa City is struggling with this right now because they sent it through one way and now they're sending it back. So here's what I would ask for. I'd ask for limited to 1 or 2 bedrooms for the unit. Size can be 50% of the area or 1,000 square feet, but no condition to whichever is less. Allowed for interior or exterior detached units, and no requirement of owner occupancy in the unit. Just to recap, if the goal is affordable housing, let's let the language promote affordable housing. Who's going to take the risk? I think it's small-time landlords and property owners hoping to help the quality of their house and invest in the neighborhood. I have printed off the things I mentioned here of my house. I took everything just from the Beacon, the Blackhawk County, and put the measurements and put the links to the articles and the code in Cedar Rapids. Just want to say thank you again for your service for the community. It is appreciated. I'd be happy to stay and talk to anyone, share anything. I hope to be part of the solution as we bring owner-occupied housing and rental housing to make more affordable housing here in Cedar Falls. So that is all. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you to both speakers for stepping up and voicing your opinion. All right, thank you.
I would say on the issue of the not allowing 2 rental permits on the property, basically, kind of puts somebody in a box if they build one of these units on their property as a rental or mother-in-law suite or whatever you call it, and then for some reason their situation changes and they need to move, and it maybe isn't the right time to sell. There's times in the market where it's smarter to rent your home out for a little while than sell it. So now we're kind of saying, well, don't get a permit for it. Just do it on the side, you know, because we're not going to allow that. And I think it could put somebody in a box that they don't want to be in, and I think it could put us in that position. I guess I'm not sure why we're restricting landlords. I think if the worry or the thought is that every landlord's going to run out and build another house on their property, I can tell you the properties that I own, I don't have room for one of these already when you consider all the parking that's required and so forth. So I don't think I know of a lot of landlords that have a ton of extra space on their property. I'm just afraid that if we're going to box somebody in that's an actual homeowner that does this and now they're trapped. Because think about it, when they go to sell it, it would be good for an investor to buy it because now it has 2 pieces on the same property. You kind of buy it as a duplex, but you can't because you have to move into half of it. Well, so an investor's not going to buy it because they're typically not going to move into half of that. So I just think it puts it in a bad spot going forward. I think it should be allowed to have landlords, investment property owners should be allowed to do this also. And I also would like to say something about the bedrooms. I kind of agree with the discussion here. 800 square feet, that you could definitely have 2 bedrooms in that space, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have 2 families living there. It means you're probably going to have the ability to have children living there with you. If we're trying to keep it open to more housing and a more affordable housing for families and young people in our community, I think we should get rid of personally, I think we should get rid of the single ownership, and I think we should get rid of the 1-bedroom limitation. Just do it by size. I mean, size is going to dictate. It's not going to be a 3 or 4 bedroom house in 800 square feet, or if there's already a shed on the property, now it's really 600 square feet, or what it is, or what it's limited to by the size of the lot, anyways. So that's my opinion on that.
Thank you, Gordy. I like the ADU idea. I think it's great. I guess I am under the opinion that I'd like the more restrictions to start with. Test the water before we get too far into it. I think if we have too few of restrictions to start, that it may create a situation we're not looking for. So I'd rather proceed with caution as it's kind of laid out right now.
I would tend to agree, actually. I think it's easier to probably loosen it up than it is to tighten it back in later once things are already built, or having a grandfather in and now you have different rules on some of them that are already existing compared to something that's being built new, and this is new for us. So seeing how it goes for a while, I would also like it a little bit more restricted.
Any more comments? Questions?
So I just have a question regarding rental property generally in Cedar Falls. Has there been any issues with landlords not keeping up properties that they rent out, or that there's issues with people who are homeowners, and they have rental properties around them and they're in disrepair, or there's issues with that because the owner's not occupying that rental property? Because I understand what you're saying, but in fact, I think I asked a question about that when I think I was on the phone, about the fact that you have to have the owner there. I think that really ensures that the property is going to be well maintained. And so that's my question is, has there been issues with maintenance of rental properties in the city?
And I would say, yes, we have a lot of problems with rental properties in the city that we're always doing code enforcement on. And when they change hands, of course, there's a lot of rental properties that are well kept up as well. But we do have, we do deal with a lot of absent landlords, and and have to address some of those concerns. And I think one of the reasons that the downtown code has these restrictions, so it would be a little odd to have more restrictions downtown than we would have in the rest of the city. And one of the factors that was put into consideration when that ADU ordinance was put in to the downtown code was it was one measure. I mean, this is just one little tiny piece of creating some small affordable units, an opportunity for those. In the central part of the city, for example, there's some neighborhoods that are 70, 80, 90% rentals already. And so one way to help stabilize some of these neighborhoods that have a lot of rental properties is to create opportunities for more home ownership. And it was touted in the downtown code as one means of providing some additional income if you have a young family who wants to buy a property, and provide some more income to help keep up the original house and provide income to maintain that property and afford it. It's just one of those nuances with this particular housing type. So it's not supposed to be the end all be all for affordable housing, of course. This is just one small piece of maybe helping to stabilize and provide some incentive to stabilize some of the existing neighborhoods and also provide some additional income to those property owners.
A question, since this provision was included in the downtown code, how much has it been used?
Zero.
Zero.
Yeah.
We have not seen it used yet.
Thank you. I am of a similar opinion as both of you, that I would like for us to proceed with caution. I think that from the two arguments that have been raised, the one with the square footage, I can see that argument where we might consider increasing the square footage of the ADUs, but I would support keeping the homeowner requirement for now to see where that goes. I don't believe we have a shortage of short-term rentals specifically in this area, and if the goal is to try to contribute to the housing issue, then I think we need to keep that requirement for now.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Do you allow additional public comment?
I can in a second. You were going to.
Oh, I was just saying that I agree with what you're all saying about the restricted, and the quality of it could, could definitely be at a different standard if the owner is living there versus not, and that does make sense, the resale value of it. But it is interesting, the other point, which I think is a separate issue that the public brought up, was restricting the limiting to one bedroom. Mm-hmm. If the size is the size, given the fact that none of its, the downtown area has not been utilized since that has been brought up, might be interesting to see if that changes anything for these residential property. If, given you're so restricted, but at the same time, the square footage is the square footage, and who are we to say, one bedroom or two bedroom in that space, if that would change things a little bit, knowing that the owner is there as well. So I just think that's a separate argument that we could maybe talk about. I don't know how the rest of you feel about that, but could be something to explore.
Well, I would say, in addition, I agree with the two-bedroom, that even if you do build this for your elderly parents, let's say, having a second room is still a very good thing to have, a space to separate, or to have a guest room of their own, or to have a den or a sewing room. One bedroom really restricts all these other functions that aren't always multiple people. Sometimes they're just other uses for that space, and still an in-home office or something that they're still using. You see this, I'm sure, as well in your business.
So it wouldn't restrict having an office or a separate dining room or any of those other types of units. It's just talking about the number of bedrooms. So
if there was a closet in that room, would that be?
Would be considered a bedroom.
Well, I have a closet in my office.
Yeah. So I think the other thing to keep in mind is we're trying to find ways to keep these accessory too. So they need to be subordinate to the principal dwelling. And we have some pretty small houses in the town, and we have, we're trying to keep these to be small units that are subordinate to, so that we can make the argument that they're actually accessory and not a principal use of the property.
Another quick thing to note is, at present, the way that it's constituted, there is no parking requirement. Now, I can see some arguments that would start to bring parking into the discussion if we start to allow more than one bedroom. And that's the trade-off that we run into when we're talking about do you have more bedrooms, and then start to add parking to the requirement, or do we leave it as is? And really, once you start to add parking to this, then the appearance of these properties stops looking like single-family properties. So it's really just there are some trade-offs, I guess, is all I'm getting at. All good points really so far. So it just trying to provide that perspective.
Thank you. Some good discussion. Any more commissioners would like to comment? I would take another comment from public.
I'll be brief. Thank you. I appreciate that. A couple things on parking. You can look at the one. There's ample parking in the driveway and on the street for a lot more than that's there. You mentioned that there could be additional income for people coming in as a homeowner. A bank's not going to give you, to have that shown when you're applying for a loan, you'd have to have a lease already signed. And so that kind of is the cat and mouse game. How is that going to help someone new get a spot in a home? It's really not. They'll have to get approved for the home loan, and then it'll be gravy on top is how the bank will look at that. The comment about rundown rental units is actually, I think, a little bit flipped, because here in Cedar Falls, we have pretty stringent. I've got some properties in Waterloo and one here in Cedar Falls. It's a lot more strict here, the rental codes, and you guys actually have more ability to regulate a rental home than an owner-occupied or just an owner home. We could drive around my street and I could bring you to owner homes that are very rundown. I would say the worst rental in Cedar Falls looks better than some of these owner homes, and it's a different thing there. So I don't think that applies. If we're keeping our codes where we want them to be on rentals, then they will be upkept, they will be kept nice, and that's on the city that enforces that. And I think you guys do a very thorough job of enforcing that. I don't expect that it's going to go my way tonight from the conversations, and I respect that. I respect your guys' service to that. My question would be is how long do we have to let this go before we're willing to relook, and what does success look like? Does that mean we just wait until no one does it and it doesn't go well, and then is it 6 months, is it a year, 2 years, 3 years in the downtown district? Nothing's happened, so I would say that it hasn't been successful in creating more affordable housing. If the goal is to have an ordinance that says we tried, I get that. If we put that forward and say no one fit in this box, then that's fine, but I would just ask maybe put it on the agenda for a year from now to make sure it doesn't get dropped or missed, because I know as things go on, it goes long. So that would be my ask. If it doesn't go the way that I would say is more favorable to more housing, then at what point do we wait? The last thing I'll say is that if you're worried about how do we tailor this back, you can restrict the number of folks that live in one if you want to tone it back or tone it there. But we already allow 658 square foot homes and a 450 square foot garage. It's not wrecking the neighborhood to have that garage converted to a 2-bedroom ADU. I think it goes with the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, one more. I opened the gate.
Just a point of context, and I guess the question was answered, how many have been used in the downtown area? And the area answer was 0. Is that what I understand? There's not been any ADUs done in the area that's allowed?
Yeah, the code hasn't been in place for very long, so maybe it's not a good judge yet of and maybe it's not as well known, for example, that they're allowed as well. So
just for some other perspective on that as well, there's a lot of other development potential that's offered in the downtown code. So, is someone going to build an ADU, or are they going to have 5 or 6 units on their property, which can be built given the downtown code. So it's not an apples to apples kind of comparison when we're considering the rest of the city adopting this. There's a lot of other things that developers downtown are choosing to do instead of ADUs, and that's what it's really competing with.
That may be so, but you'd think there'd be one. when I grew up and bought my first home, it was 800 square feet. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, and for that standard, it was just fine. For us to continue to push bigger and less bedrooms is not an answer to me. And whenever we put more restrictions on things, it becomes not a program. I think the suggestions that have been made have been very reasonable, and I would push forward with the 2 bedrooms. I think that's the least reasonable thing you could do to it, because you're basically saying that we can't have single people live in a house with kids, because otherwise they'd have to share a bedroom. That doesn't seem to be a positive thing to me, but it's your consideration. You guys can obviously do what you think is best, but I would rather see the thing opened up so there's more possibility.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bring that back to commission. Any more comments, questions, discussion? Otherwise, we're looking for a motion as is to vote up or down.
I think I would just say thank you for your feedback today. It was really, really helpful in my decision. That being said, though, thinking about everything that you all have said from your perspective, I would like to put a motion forward to move it to City Council as is. I think it's a good idea to, let's just kind of test the waters, and then we can revisit it. I like your idea of making sure we come back and we have a discussion later and we check on it, but I think as is would be my motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Alberhaski?
Aye.
Gribovich?
I will abstain.
Hartley?
Aye.
Henderson?
Aye.
Johnson? Aye. Moser?
Aye.
Watkins?
Aye.
Sorensen?
Nay.
Stallnaker?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries.
All right, thank you. That ends our old business. We have no new business for tonight, but we do have a special order of business. We are without a vice chair currently, and we need to fill that spot for the remainder of the calendar year. So after a conversation with multiple commissioners, I am nominating Alan Stallnaker as the vice chair, and we would need to have a voice vote on that. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right. Motion carries. You are the new vice chair. Thank you.
All right. Very good.
All right, and that was our special business. Is there any commission updates for tonight, please?
I don't have any commission updates for you.
No commission updates. I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.